I'm going to show you something hidden in plain sight having to do with popular culture that no one else has left online. I guarantee it. It's simple. It's superficial. It's downright ridiculous because our masters are fucking laughing at us. Um, what I also want you to appreciate, and you should, and most don't, I guarantee it, the Hegelian dialectic, unfortunately, is alive and well. I'm talking about polarizing bullshit. If you've heard of positive vibes only, well, there you go. That's one example. If you've seen people with I voted pins, that's another example. It's everywhere you look. That's why football is, pushed on people, among other things, to reinforce this garbage. I want you to think about that. I want you to think about being pulled in two different directions at a minimum so that you don't appreciate how all the pieces fit together and make this thing hum that we call reality. Because you're not supposed to understand how any of it works, especially how you and I work, and how we fit into the system at large. And I almost told you more than I should. So, back to point. I asked this thing, I'm talking about Google, and the bullshit AI, which should not exist and would not exist if you and I were surrounded by adults. That's right. AI would not exist, but it does, which means you and I are not surrounded by smart people. So I asked a number of questions. Here, I'll show you what I left in there. It said, does Sabbath refer to Saturn or Jupiter? And you've probably heard of the Sabbath. I used to get drunk with a fella at a call center, and on lunch we'd joke around about this shit, and we'd argue about it back and forth because it's a really wishy-washy subject. Ask yourself right now, or ask yourself, is the Sabbath Saturday or Sunday? Do you know? And do you know what Sabbath refers to? Because if you don't, it's right there. It says to rest. Now, if it factors into Saturday or Sunday, then it does relate to the wandering stars. Yeah? Which leads us to this jazz, roughly enough. I got a little squirrely with some of these at the end of the stack, which is what I'm showing you first. The Sabbath is on Saturday for Jews, based on the biblical seventh-day rest. Many Christians observe Sunday as the day of rest and worship, which they consider the Lord's Day, because it is the day of Jesus' resurrection. And I want you to think about this stuff. I want you to think about what you're made from. I want you to think about the rock beneath your fucking feet. It's not the pseudo-intellectual flat earth. It's not the physics-defying globe theory. Those were spoon-fed to people, which means that's a red flag, by the way. You can't use either of them as a tool. And when I say you can't use either of them as a tool, you don't find answers in either of those outlines, is my point. That sings to how this whole fucking thing hums. Remember how I began complaining about the Hegelian dialectic? That's why you've heard of the flat earth and the globe theory. Pick a side. Don't think for yourself. Don't use any of the pieces of the puzzle. Just react. Don't think. And that's what people do. That's why they know nothing. Once again, what I'm showing you today is superficial. It's ridiculous to me because nobody's figured this shit out. It's just clunky to me. It's just clunky. So either way, Saturday and Sunday. Ooh. So here's another one. I said, what is Sabbath? Sabbath is a day of rest and worship observed by abstaining from work to focus on spiritual renewal and family. Bunch of just superficial dog shit. So moving along, I told you this has to do with pop culture, if I'm not mistaken. And unfortunately, it too has to do with what you saw earlier, having to do with Saturday being observed by Jews, having to do with the Sabbath in particular, because one of the celebrity puppets that I'm going to highlight, I like a lot of the stuff that he did, but he was a Zionist and his scummy family still supports that shit. So now you probably know what we're talking about if you didn't already. Connect the dots and jump ahead. I imagine. Tommy Iommi and Ozzy Osbourne were in the heavy metal band Black Sabbath. Yeah? Because our masters are laughing at us, and I highly doubt that they named the band Black Sabbath. Now, I want you to think about that Saturday and Sunday again. I want you to think about specifically the fact that Ozzy is he was a Zionist, and he was fucking a Zionist who was his handler. That's who Sharon Osbourne is. That's her role. That's what her role was in terms of management and quite literally as his wife and otherwise. It's a very questionable arrangement, if you will. This is also something that happens often. You could take Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love. Courtney Love is Ashkenazi. If this starts to sound kind of wild and far-fetched, do think of the fact that Frances Bean, Kurt Cobain's kid, yeah, grew up to marry into the Tony Hawk family, which is much the same of what I'm pointing out here. Now, back to point, because that's not the entire, that's not really the reason why I clicked record on here, but it's things that you need to think about. And most people don't. They'll just say, that's anti-Semitic. Who do you think gave you that slogan to repeat? Use your brain. So, bands, typically speaking, if I'm not mistaken, they don't pick the name of the band. They don't write some of the names of the songs. They don't write a lot of the songs. These things are spoon-fed to them, and they perform them. Not unlike that boy band, the Monkees. Even though that was exclusively just superficial shit. So, how many of you, in terms of Black Sabbath trivia, know the original name of the band? That's where I'm going with this. And that's why I'm doing the dramatic pause, too. Because some of you do know the name, but have you ever connected the dots? Black Sabbath was originally known as, drum roll. Some of you know the answer to this, but have you ever considered that? Our masters are fucking laughing at us. Let's see if it's there. Yep, Black Sabbath was originally named Earth at the end of 1968. Before becoming Black Sabbath, the band was called Earth. They also had a brief initial name, the I can't say it. The Polka Tulk Blues Band. Now that is believable to me that they might just have come up with that. Then whoever wanted to use them, yeah, started pushing this other bullshit. Now that's speculation, but just the same, Earth and Black Sabbath are a very strange pairing. They both speak to this bullshit that I'm complaining about. And some of you know what I'm talking about, because some of what I am referring to, I didn't rattle it off in this video, because I've said it before. I spoon-fed you guys answers for over 10 years. And if you do not know what I'm talking about, I suggest you watch other videos in the numerous accounts that I fucking moderate. I can teach you things you're not supposed to know. I guarantee people do not know these things. You and I are surrounded by fucking morons. If you sat through this, assume otherwise. And you can always scroll through the propaganda and circulate that shit and fuck things up for you and I alike. Enjoy your night.